Dude, thanks for inviting me into your studio. This is awesome.
I'm so happy to be
in
talking
New York.
with you.
This is the coolest, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I started doing this, I never would have thought that on the Instagrams, on the internets, that more people would send me back and forth your stuff. And so as I got into it early, I thought I was the smartest guy in the room and you have changed my parenting and my approach to being married probably more than anybody else. You and Esther Perel, probably the two people who have impacted me the most. So thank you for doing that, for showing me like, it's kind of like flying on an airplane and then you think, I could probably drive this, right? When it comes to like how to be a good partner, how to have kids, all that stuff. So I'm imagining we'll get through one or two of these questions that I have. I've got tons of these things. And as I'll tell my audience, like this is a thinly veiled, I need your help. That's what we're asking here. So I want to start here. What I've seen over I've been working with young people for a long time, for a couple of decades. And what I've seen increase over the last probably 10 years, but especially in the last 5, is that kids seem to be holding the emotional space of the household. Like the whole house rests on kids, whether they're teenagers, whether they're college kids, or even newborns. Like the whole parents are looking at their kids to say, are we okay? In my guts, that doesn't feel right. That feels too much, so that a kid can't carry that. Am I out to lunch here?
I do not think you're out to lunch here.
Right.
And you know,
one right.
I have a little more to say. You're definitely not out to lunch. We'll start there. It's always a good starting point. I mean, I think what you're also pointing to is something's happened in terms of like an overcorrection where, I don't know, when we were being raised or even generations before, it was like parents in charge. I don't really care about how you're feeling. Go to your room, pull up your bootstraps. Let's move on. And then I think there has been this overcorrection to how are my kids feeling? And I am not only so hyper attentive to how they're feeling, but now we've gone from not caring about kids' feelings to my kids' feelings have the power to dictate what I do as a parent. And I actually think, I love a pilot metaphor. I have so many. We'll see how many I can get in today. But if you think about one version of a pilot, the whole passenger cabin is upset. There's turbulence. You're like, oh my God, turbulence. And let's say version 1 of a pilot was like generations ago as a parent who'd say, everyone be quiet. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Zip it. Okay. And it's not really what I want to hear as a passenger. I'm kind of like, does the pilot even realize it's turbulent? Or I probably get more activated. But pilot 2 to me is the overcorrection, which is, oh my God, turbulence. And everyone has to be calm. In fact, I'm not even calm when you're not calm. And maybe someone could come into the cockpit and tell me how to do this. And you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm not even scared of the turbulence anymore. I'm really scared that this person is my pilot. Like literally, my feelings have gone from not important to contagious in a way that is equally as kind of scary to me. And I think at Good Inside, what we stand for, and then what we try to make very practical, is kind of thinking about parenting as that pilot you want. You want a pilot who's going to validate your experience. Hey, there's a lot of screaming. We get it. There's turbulence. And even a pilot who says, you guys want to keep screaming back there? Do your thing. Because what I know, and this is the boundary point, is I've kind of flown planes a long time. I know I'm going to get us to the ground safely. So it makes sense you're upset. I know what I'm doing, and I will see you on the ground. And I know if I'm the passenger, I'm like, okay. They told me my experience is real, but they also weren't taken over by my experience. There's validation, but then there's also this boundary and differentiation. My pilot didn't become my anxiety. Yeah. And I think what you're saying is, we kind of have to come back a little bit toward the middle. You gave me a word, and I've probably quoted you 100 times, the word sturdy. Yeah. And that's the best word. Like it's not rigid, it's not soft, it is like a tree. It'll sway, but that sucker's rooted into the ground. If I back all the way out, working with parents, I almost am struggling with asking a parent to be sturdy because I don't feel like adults are sturdy right now. I know. They feel like they're all over the place and almost needing a kid to be anchored, right? Am I crazy? No, I think this is what we're saying is you don't want a pilot who looks to the passengers to know if they are safe on a plane.
So where do you tell a couple who's struggling like in a marriage?
I mean, I think sturdiness in what you're saying, it is this ability, let's just define it, kind of, to me, being sturdy is your ability at once to know what's going on for you, to know your values, to know your limits, to be connected to yourself, while at the same time, you're kind of just still porous enough that I can connect to you. I can know what's going on for you. I can see that as real, as important, but I can balance that with what is going on for me. I'm not taken over by it, but I'm also not so threatened by it that I have to push it away. And I think what you're saying is, how can we be sturdy for our kids if often we don't feel sturdy ourselves or sturdy in the partnership we're in, given that's a foundation for our family? And I think this is actually the right question. And it is why I feel so passionate about the work that is Good Inside, because I think we approach the whole system at once.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
That's what it is. How can I understand how to validate my kids' experience and understand that, yeah, it wouldn't be a big deal in my life, but it is a big deal to not be invited to a birthday party? How can I see that as real for my 4-year-old, but not add on my own anxiety of, oh my goodness, my 4-year-old's never going to have friends.
I'm going to call that mother and say, you should have invited my kid.
Exactly. Right. And so I think what it starts with is developing a different type of relationship with ourselves. If I'm someone who grew up in a kind of stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about household, right? We don't do this in our family. You're soft, whatever it is. Then it makes sense when I see my kid upset. I get very triggered. I yell or I shut them down because at some point it was adaptive to shut my own emotions down during my earliest years. And so I think sturdiness, as an example, if that's a parent I'm talking to, I'd say, look, I know you want to show up in a different way to your kid. That's amazing. And let's have an order of operations in which that makes sense. I can't give out what I don't have inside me. It just, the math doesn't work. So I might even say, tell me about something hard in your day. It can be really hard if you grew up thinking emotions were soft. And actually the starting point before I talk to my kids differently is even just to be able to say to myself, I hit traffic today. That wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but I'm also allowed to take a moment to say, that was annoying. My morning didn't start out the way I wanted it to.
Right.
That is not what I imagined. That's not what I would have wanted. Our ability to even just take a moment and say that to ourselves, that's going to make us better able to not be so thrown off by my kid's emotion because I'm building up the skill inside.
I had an experience when my show took off. There was a big, dirty secret that I carried, which was I'm out here traveling the country talking to folks, but my daughter, she was 5 or 6, wouldn't hug her dad. And I couldn't figure it out. And at first it was like I'm a big guy, I could pick her up, and she would go rigid. And it was kind of a funny game, but also it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my wife said, is there any chance that her body's identified you as not safe? And I remember thinking, I said out loud, like, I don't yell, I don't hit anybody. Like, and she goes, no, you're a great dad, but we all can feel the nuclear reactor here, right? And I got frustrated and I went and sat with a therapist and I was like, and 9 months later, I remember and it was going through some hard stuff, right? Yeah. And I remember speaking the words out loud. We were all wrestling and I said the words, Josephine, get off me. And I remember, I was like, no way, right? And now 3 or 4 years later, I'm a human jungle gym. She can't get off. But I realized the angst and the turmoil in my house was, you keep doing this, it's funny, because just maybe a month ago, I was sitting in front of that same therapist and I said, I just need what I know to be true to be here.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's a long journey. But what you're saying rings true with me, which is my kids can't not be anxious if I'm electric all the time, or if me and my partner aren't doing good. They don't have anything to anchor into.
Yeah.
And so, but I walk around blaming them for the tension in the house, and all they're doing is absorbing and putting back into what I'm putting in there. I feel like we have a culture that loops and loops on this idea of being happy. And then, which depending on what you Google, it's always spits out some kind of curve, right? The U-shaped happiness curve of your life. But there's this idea that having kids takes happiness from you. And now for the first time in history, people are just opting out completely.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance, and you do the best at this, of telling the truth and also telling the truth? How do you navigate looking at somebody saying we're in a world, in a little sliver of history, you can choose whatever you want. And having kids isn't the funnest thing or the happiest thing all the time. But also on the back end, the research says the depth of joy is pretty profound.
Yeah.
And there's something worth, it's kind of like doing a workout, right? There's something worth going in there and being uncomfortable for an hour so that 30 years from now I can roll around with my grandkids, right?
Yeah.
How do you walk through that season with somebody talking, your happiness shouldn't dictate, right? It shouldn't dictate every minute of your day. And there's some things to sacrifice for.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're asking so many questions here, like, and all the right ones. So number one is, what is the difference between kind of short-term convenience and...
Gosh, that's the right word, convenience.
It's convenience. I think that's what, I actually feel like
that's a great
humanity, humans, we like convenience. It's hard to fight it. It's dopamine, it's ease, it's the thing that short-term, our body's like, yes, please, more of that. And so there have always been these moments, I think, in history where, society, we have more convenience in our life. Obviously, the car is one, the plane, the internet. Something has happened, I think, in the last number of years where I think we will always choose convenience over what is long-term good for us. It's hard, but I think we're seeing, even in whether people are deciding to have children or not, even how we interact with our kids, that we are prioritizing convenience in a way I think that we never have before, to the degree it makes us kind of worried at times, like, ooh, what is it going to be like in 20, 30 years, right? Obviously the world, right? We have a lot of inconvenient moments. And I think that is something around parenthood that we just have to talk more about. Having young kids is massively inconvenient. I think that's like the best definition. Like, I go to the grocery store, I'm just trying to get milk and some orange juice. My kid has a meltdown and I'm like, now I have to leave. And now I have to put those things back and I can't even pay for them because the line is too long. And now I have to get back there. That is hugely inconvenient. And we don't say that enough. It's not rainbows and butterflies when you have your 3-year-old freaking out and your 6-month-old on your chest, right? And I actually think the more we can help people anticipate these inconvenient moments, know that those moments aren't a sign that something's wrong with you or wrong with your kid. It doesn't mean you're doing something so bad. And when we can help a generation of adults build more coping skills for the inconvenient grocery store meltdown, for the inconvenient, no, you do it for me puzzle moment with your kid, for the inconvenient moment of, I thought I was going to have 10 minutes alone with my kid after work before they go to bed, and instead they're protesting and they're having a hard time. All of those moments are a gap between our perceived unconscious expectation and reality. And I think speaking more honestly about parenting doesn't make parenting less desirable. It actually makes parents a lot more competent and a lot more equipped for all of the ups and downs that are just inherent in the journey.
Well, that's what I love about what you guys do here at Good Inside is it's the same way when I talk to a husband or a dad who grew up getting beat up, getting thrown around, and finding himself not wanting to repeat that, but there's no other plan.
Right.
And if I can demoralize it, and I can take away this like, you have character issues, and just say, dude, you lack some skills, man. You've never practiced this before.
That's exactly it.
But you give parents permission to say, you've never had a meltdown with a 3-year-old. I remember getting 2 kids out of car seats and thinking, I would rather set myself on fire. Like, it will take me 30 seconds to go in that store and get what I need. And yet, it's the in and the out. But you distill it down to a set of skills people don't have. And when it's a skill, then I can practice it. It's a free throw. I can practice that. If it's a shame-filled failure, I'm not going to practice. I'm just going to try to bulldoze through it, or I'm going to try to go around it, right? Ignore it.
That's right. I mean, I really think parenting is the last frontier where we glorify instinct alone. Instinct alone.
Though, right?
It is especially insane because, again, you want to go to the doctor who has the best medical school. They wear that with a badge of pride. And I don't know one investor anymore who would invest in a CEO founder who said, I'm never going to need executive coaching. I do it by instinct. You're like, I'm glad we established that this meeting is over. Thank you for saving me my time. And yet with parenting, there's this idea, and it's put out in society, especially with moms, but anyone, maternal instinct. I should be able to figure this out on my own. It shouldn't be this hard. I mean, you are one human raising a totally different human. There is nothing harder than that. And I think I love a good metaphor to really drive this home. And so to me, most parents I know would say, there might be some things with my kids I want to do similarly to how my parents did it with me. But there's definitely a lot I want to do differently. Some people say I want to do almost all of it differently. But if we think about that.
I don't like those people.
Right? Yeah. And if you think about parenting as a language, it's like saying I was raised in English and I want to speak to my kids in Mandarin. No amount of wanting to learn Mandarin is going to help you learn Mandarin if you're not learning and practicing Mandarin. Like if I said to my friend, I just feel like now that I'm a mom, Mandarin's going to come naturally. I should be able to figure it out on my own. They'd be like, yeah, that's just not how Mandarin works. Like you can learn it, but you will have to learn the skills and practice. And then in your worst moments, Becky, you are going to end up yelling in English. Like that's just what's going to happen. And I really do think Good Inside is like a language for parents where the only thing that comes naturally in parenting is how you were parented. And so if you want to do things differently, I do think loving our kids, a lot of these moments, that deep love can come naturally. But yeah, handling a grocery store meltdown, knowing what to do when your kids ask you hard questions, but how does the baby get in the belly? And you're like, okay, you're really asking me. Okay. Or lying to your face or being woken up at 2 a.m. for the 9th night in a row. I think you're right. Like that's not character. That's not love. That's skills. And the best news about skills is you're not behind.
That's right.
Anyone can learn it at any time.
What do you, well, tell me if I'm crazy. I'll get a call and it will be a dad or it will be a wife. And they will say, or dad or mom, and they'll say, our sex life is falling apart. And we've been married 10 years. And then we talk and we talk and we talk and we talk. And then they'll say, oh, we have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And I'm pretty sure like my partner's pregnant. And I'll often just stop and say, hey, call me back in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be survival sex. There's gonna be just gaps. You're gonna have to learn how to communicate in other ways. You're gonna we don't have a picture.
That's right.
None of us talked about what this is supposed to feel like.
That's
and
right.
that I'm allowed to miss somebody or miss the old days and we're creating new days.
Yes.
But there's no skill in how do we sit down and talk about, right? Now we have this chaotic world. What's intimacy look like in this new world? What does laughter look like in this new world? What does getting away look like in this new world? Am I bananas?
I think that what you're saying, and I said this recently to a live audience who seemed to really resonate, is we have a better understanding of how kids learn how to swim than we do about anything about child development. Because if you think about, I don't know if you did swim lessons. I did swim lessons for my kids. You spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and it just takes a long time.
Right.
Where imagine if you didn't understand the swim process. The first, second lesson, you know what you'd say? This isn't working. This isn't working. I'm just going to pull my kid out of swim, or this is a bad teacher, or my kid's never going to learn how to swim. We know that when your kid puts their face in the water and blows bubbles, by the way, you're still years from swimming, but we're like, yay, right? Because you know to expect it.
Right.
Whereas, what is it like to be partnered up and raising young kids? What's going to change in my partnership? What is the energy shift going to look like? What is it like when my kid starts to hit, to know what are the skills they need to learn to stop hitting? But how long will it take between learning skills, practicing skills, and seeing it show up in the game? I was talking to the Duke women's basketball coach, and it was interesting. She's like, you watch tape all the time, and you look at players' reads, and some players in certain moments, they have tough reads, so we have to change it, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice, and then in the game, it doesn't show up, and you practice, and you practice, and then one day, later than you want, you're like, oh,
there it is.
There it is. But all of this actually has so much to do with expectation, because how we all end up feeling in any moment isn't just a feeling. It's often the feeling and how surprised we are by the feeling. And I always think if we can remove the surprise, feelings are still hard, but they're a lot less explosive. So if I know a couple examples, I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I'm sitting being like, I don't have sex with my partner anymore. If I can say to myself after, I knew this stage was coming. By the way, still permission to feel sad, to feel lost. How else can we feel close? But the way it's going to feel, the level out of 10 is going to be totally different. If I understand why kids lie, my reaction to lying to my face is not going to be like, let's throw my kid a party. I'm not going to throw my kid a party for lying at me. But if I understand developmentally what's happening, my reaction's totally different. And so I think this is really a call in parenting. We need education. Like we need school to some degree, not in the ways of like homework and being yelled at by teachers, right? But the best part, education is power.